is what happens when we don't support our men to have a healthy relationship with themselves, with their emotions, with their experiences. This is what happens. This is what
Nah,
happens.
is absolute truth. And and when we're talking about like men in general, or the way that society has villainized us, I would say,
Yeah.
it's sad because of the fact that there's great dudes out there. There's great fathers, there's great role models, there's great people. And it's like, because of the fact that the actions of a few affects like this whole half of the species, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most people don't want to hear or don't have never come across the data that, in fact, this thing, and I hate the word, but I'm going to use it just for simplicity, the that the patriarchy,
Yeah.
the collective of systems that we call the patriarchy, let me put it that way, um, affects men to a not the same degree, but it has effects and impacts on men in ways that are just very different than
Yeah.
the way it affects women, BIPOC, LGBTQ plus, all these things, right? So yeah, man. And the second, this is from a gender studies prof. I did
Yeah.
not come up with this, but she told me this and it blew my mind. The demographic that benefits the second most from these systems called the patriarchy is
Yeah.
actually white women,
I believe it. I believe it
right?
because at the end of the day, like, and I have a saying for like most of my male friends,
Yeah.
like who are married. Like, I'm, in the process of getting engaged and starting my family now and whatnot. And yup, it's all good, right? So I'm in the process of doing all that now and whatnot, and it's weird because of the fact that is going to benefit from me being mo- the male
Yeah.
role model and being in my masculine energy or whatnot. While because even though I'm the king of the castle, the king is always the last. It's in general, the king is the last to be served because you got to serve everybody in his kingdom and make sure they're protected and all that good stuff.
That's old school sovereignty right there, brother.
Yeah, man. So it's like,
Forget this.
but that's how it's supposed to be. I'm not saying that's how it is now.
Yep. Oh no, it's
You
definitely
know?
not now. And that's because
Yeah,
sovereignty means stand alone, don't need anybody, fuck all y'all. Like that's the new definition of sovereignty. You defined ancestral sovereignty,
yeah.
which you
Well,
just
I thought that would be like general sovereignty in its own, because that's just like, I feel that was like common nature to be like that. You know what I mean?
no, no, man. Yeah, America's a funny place too. I always say at the very fundamental, like at the highest level, you're a contradiction right from the start because you're called the United States of America, but the thing that's celebrated is the individual.
Yeah.
It's so wild. Like that's the last thing that should be celebrated. You're like, it's so
No,
interesting to me.
no. It's a. I would say that in the U.S. there's a lot of back and forth, and yet again contradictions, like you're saying, because of the fact that the way the country was founded on people coming from other countries and building this one nation, right? Even though there was millions that were massacred, but we're not gonna dive too deep
We don't
into
go
that.
there. We don't have to talk
We
about that.
won't go there. But the general idea was, give me your poor, give me your stupid, give me everybody. Let's just do this big melting pot and let's see what happens, right?
Yeah.
I don't know where it turned out where it's like, okay, cool. Like everyone's against each other. Right now, people are being targeted for the color of their skin or their immigration status. Like, I'm not saying to come here illegally, but apply for a visa, let people in, let people do the right thing. And they're targeting people that are, are business owners, people that pay taxes, good people. And it's like, what's the point of this right now? What's really behind the mechanism on this one where you're targeting good people? You're not even targeting criminals anymore.
Well, and I mean, I'm not. It's a very surface level comment, but I do appreciate what Billie Eilish said on the weekend, where she said, "No one is illegal on stolen land."
No, it's true. That's an absolute fact.
Okay, what else is there to say?
That's,
Boom.
yeah, man.
Anyways, we could riff for days on that kind of stuff, and maybe
Yeah,
we
man.
will.
Who knows? But let me, like every episode, let me give you your intro.
Perfect.
Let's go into it. All right. What up, roomies? Tonight on Neighbors, we've got a guest who lives at the intersection of the stuff that most people avoid talking about. And this stuff is actually changes your life. He's a writer and a speaker known for his TEDx talk, The Mythical Man, where he challenges how we think about masculinity and emotional expression. He's also a death doula, someone who supports people and their families through the realities of dying, grief, and the end of life care. And the founder of the Canoe space uh, built around the celebration of life and death. On top of that, he also works in men's wellness and community building, creating spaces where men can actually be honest, grow, and connect. This one's going to be a powerful, human, and real one, roomies. Welcome, Paul Simard.
Damn. Thanks, brother. What a beautiful intro. Now all we
Thank
got
you,
to do is live
you,
up to
man.
that.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. Like, I really appreciate you coming on. Like, I know that we had some scheduling issues and whatnot, but thanks, bro. Like, I really appreciate it. And I love getting the perspective of people that work with people, and actually connect.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I never really had a choice. I was raised by parents who were very community driven, who gave a lot of their time to our community. They both had their passions. They both have the things that they care about. And it was kind of just what we grew up with. And people were just always going to be a part of my life. It was just never going to be anything else. I can't sell widgets. I can't sell, cars. I can't do any, I can, but it was always going to have to be about people.
Nah, I feel you on that, man. And I kind of I could connect with you on that one because even though I consider myself introverted, I love like talking to people and like I'm very curious to know like other people's perspectives on life and like how they deal with things and what's their journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you talked about being introverted. I don't think introverted and curiosity are not mutually exclusive, right? And so we can
Yeah,
be introverted, and all introverted really means to me is I stay inside first, right?
yeah,
That's what it means to me. I start with the inside first, and then when I'm ready, I'll go outside, and I'll go outside in the places and in the ways that I feel comfortable doing. And this is obviously one of those things. So you might be introverted, but that doesn't mean you're not curious, and that doesn't mean you can't flow with people and we can't have conversations. People don't know this, but we've just been jamming for 15 minutes and we never met each other before,
man. That's how it
So
is. Like
yeah,
we got the vibe, bro. But
that's what we got to do.
when people are meeting you and you're introducing yourself, like how basically like what would be your introduction if somebody's meeting you for the first time, like, and you want to like let them know about like the deaf doula and the men's wellness?
Yeah. So the first thing I do is just literally I put it out there, right? So when you tell somebody that you're a death doula, that tends to catch their attention, and I'm not doing it to catch their attention, but I also don't want to, be gentle around it and say, oh, well, I'm kind of a grief count. No, I just go out there and I say I'm a death doula and I support individuals, families, and communities in how they navigate grief, dying, and death. That's the primary area of my work. The secondary area of my work, which is what led to me becoming a death doula, actually, is working with men, helping them to deepen and create a healthier version of themselves through physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So that's kind of my angle. Somebody used this a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of love it. And I'm going to start by saying, you're this too. So it's really important that what I'm about to say, that you're this too, because you're doing these kinds of conversations, you're doing these kind of recordings. Most people that I come into contact in some way, shape, or form, they're doing this. But I love this idea of being a cultural architect. We currently live in a whole bunch of different little societies, and they are largely void of culture. And there's a difference, right? So, excuse me, when you think of science and culture, right? Culture is the
Yeah.
thing from which things grow, it nourishes. Something becomes available and possible through a Petri dish and culture, right? We're not doing so well on that front right now. And so we do have a society, and we're all navigating that society, but I think it's largely culture free. And people who are leaning into these kinds of conversations, who are encouraging people to take another look, to take a first look, maybe actually,
Yeah.
in how it is that we're navigating this thing called life. Those are people who are actually doing what they can with the Petri dish to see what kind of culture we might actually have. There's no such thing as American culture.
Yeah.
There is no such thing.
No,
So
of course not. What we consider American culture comes from all over the globe. Everything is here.
you know, American culture, for American culture to actually come through, and let's be clear, the same is true for Canada, which is where I'm from. So we're not pinpointing the US here or differentiating it. The same is true for Canada. There's no such thing as Canadian culture, in my view, right? First and foremost, because most of what we have tried to do is impose the cultures upon which we came onto this place,
Yeah.
right? And that's not how culture works. That's not how culture works. Culture is a response to the container in which you are also being asked to grow from.
Yeah.
And we've never been in right relationship to this land as Western people, largely. Let me say that, right? We had an opportunity to learn the culture from those who were here, but we didn't want to do that. So it's really, it's meaningful work what you're doing. It's important work. And I believe that the work of a cultural architect is maybe going to set forth for us the design for whatever it is that we want to build going forward.
I feel you. And since we're on the topic of culture, like, and growth, what would you would add into the culture? Like, what would you like to see? What changes would you like to see, like, across the board? And it could be on any subject.
The biggest thing for me, obviously, is through my work with a death doula, as a
Yeah.
death doula, right? And so while I work with individuals and families, somebody might have a terminal diagnosis, and I'll be supporting them as they approach death. I might also be supporting somebody who has had a loved one die, and they are navigating their relationship to the grief and trying to find a better way to move through that. So that's part of it. But then also on a larger scale, and I guess on a more exponential growth scale, my favorite thing to do is to gather in community and to have people come around the virtual fire, if you will, coffee shops, community centers, senior residences, all of these different places, gathering people and exploring together our relationship to those things. I believe that until we actually come into contact, or come to a place, I should say, where we can in fact embrace the notion that we are going to die. Don't look forward to it. You don't have to look forward to it, but you can embrace it. That we can, start to see things as some of the fundamental principles that I share with people as an example, right? Is that your grief is actually the reflection of your love. That's what it is. So if you're grieving, then you not only loved, but probably were loved to a degree that it was sustained beyond the body of that person that you're grieving,
I
right?
feel you on that.
So I'll give the example, because I love the perfect example is always with, my mom. My mom died in 2022,
My
and
condolences.
my dad is still grieving, and I say to people when I'm having conversations like this, I know that my dad is going to, and this is the key word, my dad is going to get to grieve for the rest of his life. Why? Because the love is sustained. He still loves my mom,
Yeah.
right?
How long were they together?
So last year was their 55-year anniversary. They're coming up on 56 this year.
Nice.
And notice how I'm speaking about it too, right? I'm speaking about it in a sustained way. It continues. The marriage
Yeah.
didn't end when she died, right? So
No.
death is not an ending. It is absolutely a change, but it is not an ending, right? I think that we associate so much of our love with the physical presence of the person. We don't quite learn the skills of the soul to love around a person,
Yeah.
which is sustained, which is eternal, which is forever. And I recognize that that's my belief system, and it might not be everybody's, but that love can still be sustained, and it can still be in the present. It doesn't have to be past, and it certainly doesn't have to be lost when somebody dies. So for
Nah,
me, I really want people to come into this place where, of course, sadness around someone dying, of course, tears and mourning in that sort of like Hollywood weepy kind of way. And can we also allow that grief is joyful remembering, is laughing at stories we share? That is also
true.
grief. That is also, the experience of loving someone still.
No, I completely got that, and I know this might be a little corny to say and cliche, but is the fact is that as long as their memory lives on, they still live with you. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's a cliche because it's true, for one.
Yeah.
And for two, it speaks to something else that I read in a book maybe about a year ago, let's call it, but it's absolutely true. What you just said is actually pointing to a superpower that we all have. We have the capacity to have somebody live forever. All we have to do is continue to remember them.
Yeah.
Remembering them, etymologically speaking, the membering is to bring into, right? So when you join something, you become a member of it, you've joined that thing. You've become a member of it, right? To remember is to become a member again, to rejoin again, or to rejoin, sorry. So the remembering is the rejoining of that person, right? You're actually
Yeah.
invoking that person.
Yeah.
And by invoking that person, like you said, you're making them live forever. It's a superpower.
True on
Nobody
that.
else. We all
True on
got it.
that. And like, and with those memories, it could bring you down. It could bring you up from a very dark place, especially if it's somebody that you know, that always empowered you and brought you up and cared for you.
Yeah. I
Those
mean,
memories,
again,
those memories right there could save lives.
they can save lives, and they really can. I'm going to actually go so far as they can save grief, because grief has a very bad PR firm working for it, right? We want to get through grief. We want to process our grief. We want to get beyond grief. And I say, no, I want you to nourish your grief, because by nourishing your grief, you're nourishing the love that you're getting to grieve,
Yeah.
right? Like
I got you.
if you didn't want to grieve, then you should never have loved. But then if you didn't love, then you wouldn't have all those memories. So
True on that.
grieving is a gift.
Okay. Do you, when in your professional point of view, or professional example, do you ever see that some of your clients or people that you may know, um, are resistant to grieving to somebody they truly cared for?
For sure. I mean, again, grieving, to embrace your grief takes it does take courage.
Yeah.
It does take courage, especially if the death has been, some time since it happened. A lot of people don't even make room or space for the grief, and our systems are not really built to allow for it either. When somebody dies, you got all this government paperwork you got to take care of. You got a funeral to plan. And it's almost always the immediate family that is taking care of all of these things. We've lost village, right? Like those are the kinds of things that actually village should be taking. The village should be planning the funeral. The village should be taking care of some of the back end stuff while the family starts to get into this new way of being with their grief. But because we don't have that, when my mom died, my brother and father actually got COVID the next day.
Oh my god, that's wild.
Well, that's their nervous system saying,
Yeah.
cool, I'm out. Right.
Yeah.
And so I picked up, my other brother lives about an hour or so north. And so I picked up a lot of the work, which was fine. I was happy to do it.
Yeah.
But, it took me a while before I got to the point where I could actually sit with my own grief. And I'm talking like 4 months, and that's just a reflection of the system. But I have a lot of clients who get so far along that by the time they're quote unquote ready to grieve and acknowledge their grief, they feel as if they can't because it's been so long, and they can feel the looks that people are giving them or the whispers that people are sort of sharing behind their back. And so now they don't feel like they have permission anymore. And so they resist it. And it's really probably some of the most challenging moments to work with a client who has gone some time without actually ever beginning to acknowledge their grieving.
And how would you walk somebody through that, like just to like get them to the threshold?
I mean, the very first thing that I always start with is reframing grief, right? So if I was to ask you right now, give me a synonym for grief, like legit.
I say a synonym for grief, sadness, because that's what it's associated with, you know?
Yeah. So you're going to get sadness, you're going to get pain, you're going to get emptiness, but you're going to get these things that are, generally speaking, heavy, weighty emotions, right? You're not going to hear joy. You're not going to hear celebration. You're not going to hear play or laughter. Almost no one is going to actually give you a synonym for grief. And the one thing you're definitely not going to hear is love, right? So one of the things I do is I walk them through the notion that for an emotion, and it isn't any more than love is. Love is not an emotion. When you say I love you, what you're actually saying is that I'm committing to these series of actions and emotions and ways of being with you such that we can say I love you. So that's care, that's concern, that's protection, that's presence, but it's also anger, and it's also frustration. You know, as a parent, I know this all too well. When I get angry with my child because they've done something foolish that could put them in danger for the fourth time, I feel like anger is the only thing left. Why am I angry? Well, the anger is born from a root, which is called love. I love my child. I'm trying to protect them, and I'm using anger. Anger becomes a tool, right? But the fundamental bucket from which I'm drawing from is love. Grief is the same. I think I've said it already. Grief and love for me are twins, right? They're mirrors. And think of when you stand in front of a mirror, right? There's two of you.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's one of you that is happening in the physical presence of yourself, right? So you're touching yourself, and that's love. Imagine the one that's not the physical expression of yourself. It's just the mirror image of yourself. That's grief.
Okay.
When we embrace our grief as a way of being, as the thing we now do following the death of someone, then we continue to care for them. We continue to be concerned for them. We can continue to be angry at their death. We can continue to be angry at missed opportunities, right? And why are we doing all those things? Because we love them.
Yeah. I completely get that. Yeah.
It's grieving, right? So, and this can take a long time, right? Like this can be a very slow. For some people, it's like, boom, oh my gosh, I totally get it. Yeah, of course. You know, one of my clients was so angry that she couldn't remember her father before he got sick. And the invitation we kept coming back to is you need to come to a place where you can reconcile that there was nothing you can do about his being sick. And then you'll be able to get beyond it, right? Once you can actually embrace that he was really, really sick, there was nothing you could do, and he was always going to die. Now you can see more of him, and you can grieve him in a more dynamic and diverse and kaleidoscopic way. Now we saw each other last week, and now she's remembering some of these more pleasant, joyful times. And in fact, she can't remember him being sick anymore.
Nice.
Right?
Good for her.
So this is the kind of work that we embrace people on. And then again, really trying to drop one of the most difficult things, Ariel, honestly, is can you put down the idea that you need to get beyond your grief? Can you put it down? Can
Yeah,
you allow for the fact that your grief, as long as you're grieving, all that really means is you continue to love. And don't you want that love to be sustained? You love them
yeah,
once. Do
but
you have to stop now?
no, but this is just me drawing from like personal experience, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like I don't know if grief comes in stages. Maybe I'm just going with with like my own little theory here. But
Hmm.
for instance, like one of my aunts who was extremely close to me, she was like my second mother. She passed away. I went through like sadness, anger. I went through those emotions, but now when I remember her, it's more of a joyous. I'm remembering all the good times, all the lessons I've learned from her. Is that
Hmm.
a stage of grief, or is that moving beyond grief? Because I personally don't know at like an expert level.
Yep.
So would it be like a stage of like the final stage of grief where you're more in the celebrating that person's life and like the joy that person brought you and the joy y'all had together versus I'm sad or angry or feel empty because that person's no longer here? Of course, you get the occasional, damn, I wish that person was here for this event, or damn, I wish this person was here to see, my new children and
Hmm.
all this. But when you get to the point where you're not saddened by it and you're you know live you live the memory in a more joyous manner, or and it's filled with love, is that like still a stage of grief, or is that more like denial or whatnot?
It's not denial, that for sure. Let me start by saying that. And I'll come back. Let's come back to the parent and the child analogy.
Yeah.
As a parent gains more experience and as they become more capable as a parent, the likelihood that the responses and the ways of being in certain moments is also going to change, right? So
Yeah.
I know that my third daughter benefited from a whole different version of me than did my eldest, right? My eldest was kind of like put to task by some of the things. Like she was like the guinea pig in certain ways.
Yeah.
And as I continued to lean into these things and pay attention and do my best to listen and learn and evolve, right? I was more and more capable. And so I would invite through the idea that in fact you're not in a final stage of grief, but what your grief has done is it has matured, right?
Mhm.
It has matured. It has grown up. It's exactly the same. Think about the early stages of a relationship, right? It's fiery, it's intense, it's often not really well thought out. We get swept up in
Yeah.
emotion super easily. But the relationships that are sustained are those that are able to mature, get grounded, still have the same dynamic and the same flow, and still have that root based in love, right? But
Mm.
without all the volatility, right? Because they've matured, they've evolved. The people have evolved together. This third body, that the couple has now created has also evolved. It's no longer a fiery teenager. It's a somewhat mature cognitive being called an adult, right? The relationship is involved. That's what's happening with grief too. In my belief, that there is still that third body, right? That is between the two of us, right? So me and my mom, there's that third body that is the relationship between us. That relationship has to mature again because it's in a
Yeah.
new dynamic. My mom is no longer in her physical body. So I have to learn a new way to love her now. And at the beginning, it's going to be full of emotional turmoil, like a toddler would be, and then a teenager would be. And then
Yeah.
eventually it matures over time. I don't, I'm not a big fan or a proponent of stages of grief. I think it's all experiences. Stages is what potentially could set someone up to think that once they get to this stage, quote unquote, they're over it, right? And that can come with some shame and trauma and guilt. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm over my guilt. That means I don't love them. I don't think about them anymore. I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm a terrible person, right?
Yeah.
There's that too that can come. with those moments. And what I really want to do is invite people into the idea that, in fact, grief is a collection of emotions and experiences that you have in relationship, in this case, to someone following their death in an ongoing way. And so let it be sustained.
I feel you on that. And do you often see that people like blame themselves or have like anger towards the person passing away or in process of passing?
I mean, dude, it's in our language,
Yeah.
right? So think about think about one of the most commonly used phrases when it comes to our relationship to someone who has died, right? I lost my enter the person, right?
Yeah.
My partner, my mom, my dad. I understand and I acknowledge that for the most part, people aren't meaning this in the same way. But our words have power. Our words have energy. They mean something, right?
Yeah.
And when you lose something, car keys, wallet, your child in the grocery store, there is a transgression. There is a committing of some sort of error that is inherent in the language, right?
Yeah.
You don't lose something intentionally. You don't lose something with presence. You don't That's not how it goes. So when you lose something, you're pointing to some sort of deficit, some sort of transgression that you have committed against the other person. Whether you mean it that way or not, in your body, it's felt that way. I use a good example. Many people have probably seen the show This Is Us. I don't know if you have, but
Nah.
the primary character, his name is Jack. And at one point, he gets a phone call from someone. And all we know is that his mother has died, right? He hangs up the phone. He turns to his wife and he says to her, I don't have a mom. I lost my mom.
Ooh.
Now, for TV, that plays really well.
Yeah, of course.
But in reality, to say those things is actually, it's the equivalent of erasing her. I have a mom. I absolutely have a mom.
Yeah.
And I absolutely did nothing to lead into any kind of my losing her, right? Why do we have that language though? Well, for one, we don't like dead.
Yeah.
We don't like dead because we view that as the failure of in some way, shape, or form of humanity versus life, because we are in conflict with everything. Our job as humans, in a lot of people's minds, is to overcome, to win the game, right?
Yeah.
And when someone dies, we say their health failed, or I lost a patient today, or all of this different language, right? So it's somehow pointing at something that we didn't do right. And
Why do you think? Why do you think that we view death like that?
Well, I mean, why do we view death like that? I mean, one, it's what comes with believing that you're the highest point of evolution, right? And that the world is there to serve and support you. That you are in fact living on basically an oversized pantry that you just get to consume all you want whenever you want, right?
Yeah.
We have removed ourselves from the food chain, quite literally, when you think about it. Nothing hunts us anymore in terms of wanting to eat us, right?
Yeah.
And even after we die, we don't go feed for the most part, especially not in the West. We get put in these metal containers or these wood boxes that, don't feed anything, right? So we've completely removed ourselves from the natural experience of this planet, right? And because we put ourselves at the height of all of this, because we believe that everything is there to serve us, the fact that we might possibly have a limit, right, in a world that doesn't believe in limits, in a world that believes that scarcity, that there's, let's just keep consuming the oil. Let's just keep consuming the forest. Let's just keep consuming the oceans. Let's just keep consuming the land,
Yeah.
right? in service to us, right? So death becomes the thing that puts a limitation on our capacity to do, on our capacity to consume, on our capacity to exist. And we struggle with the idea that we don't have the right to everything for as long as we want, for as much as we want.
No,
Like
I can see that.
that's a socialized thing. We don't actually, and we struggle. And why are we in this kind of point of conflict? Because we know somewhere in our bones it's not true.
Yeah, it's a lie that we tell. It's a lie that we tell ourselves.
That's right. That's right. It's the spell that's been cast, right? So I always say all the isms, capitalism, racism, sexism, all the isms, none of them actually, you can't touch any of them.
Yeah, they're non-tangible.
They're not tangible, which means they're words, they're belief systems, and I say they're spells. They have been cast by wizards seeking to serve their own purposes. We are also, though, witches and wizards all.
Yeah.
So we have the capacity to undo these spells, but we have to choose. Capitalism in and of itself, not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. The version that we are currently living through and with, that's the problem.
Yeah. And that's because the people that are quote unquote driving the machine, I would say.
Yeah. That's right. Well, the people whose spells we have allowed to be cast upon us, right? They're really good, by the way. They're really good. They're really good wizards, right?
Amazing.
Like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, these guys are master magicians, right? But we keep thinking that makes us powerless as a result, and it doesn't, right? That it doesn't. We allow them to make us powerless. We can choose differently.
It's true. When I believe that because of the fact that, we live in a society where, it's capitalism, it's money based. The fact that these people are at the top of the chain when it comes to wealth, financial wealth, and they're able to, make things happen their way, through that wealth. We feel, most people at our level or lower feel that, no matter how high we raise our voices, no matter what we do, nothing is going to change because those people are literally buying their way to get what they want.
Right. And at the end of the day, and I'm going to own this for myself so that anybody who's hearing this maybe doesn't, get triggered by what I'm about to say. But at the end of the day, it's also easier for me to just one click buy on Amazon to make myself feel better than it is to actually do the work to create a system that might actually serve, support, and nourish.
Bro, I completely feel you because my Amazon Prime be lit. Not gonna lie. My Amazon Prime be lit. But it's like those systems are in place, even though we know that it's fueling like the capitalist machine and not the version that could be beneficial for everyone. You know what I mean? That's benefiting them. The convenience of it and the marketing behind it is amazing. Just like you said, spells.
Well, and this ties back into the whole death thing, right? So you just said the convenience of it. Another word for convenience is comfort, right?
Yep.
So one of the reasons as well why we have this relationship with death is that it makes us very uncomfortable, right? When I say my mom died or I lost my mom or my mom passed away, most people, if you were to go and ask them which one they would prefer to hear, it isn't going to be my mom died.
No.
The one that's going to make them feel less uncomfortable is probably going to be my mom passed.
True.
Right. And if we're in a really woo-woo community, they're going to ask me to please use the word transition.
True.
Right.
So quick question. Do you think that, and this is a hypothetical, if we knew, right, for scientific fact, what happens after we leave like our mortal bodies and whatnot, do you think people would be more comfortable with death?
I think it would make things worse. And I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because then we would then try to fight to dominate and win and beat the thing. Right? Once we know something, we get so like we've lost our appreciation for mystery, right? We've
That is true.
lost our appreciation for magic and wonder and like just awe. Like I have no idea why a sunset does what it does when it's hitting that epic color scheme, and I frankly don't want to know. I don't want to know, right? And to me, if we knew what was going to actually happen after death, there's going to be a couple of things would happen. First of all, you know, like I said, we're going to try and defeat that thing. So now that we know what happens, we're going to try and reverse engineer, and then we're going to try to figure out the ways that we beat death, because that's actually what so many people are investing in right now, is how do we beat death, right? Brian Johnson, the whole don't die movement, insanity, ridiculous, and it's a growing movement. There's a lot of people who are putting some serious money behind the idea of don't die. The second thing that I think happens if we were to understand and know is that it actually will create a huge division, right? Because what that will actually do is it will take a very clear, it'll put a very clear target on many of the belief systems, religious or otherwise, that people are already living their lives through and that inform their way of being. And it will give us yet another way to other people, because somebody will inevitably end up saying that this proves what we said is true, and it proves that what you said isn't, and it's going to allow that to be another reason to other those people and create division and separation, right?
Yeah, I can see that happening. Yeah.
The third thing is that if we find out,
especially with like religion, and how
sure,
all the I would say like the three major religions are trying to be right at the same time, and then they'll be like, "Hey, I was the one who was right all this time." Ha, you know what I mean?
That's right. And if it ends up being that all we actually do is just die,
yeah,
right? Then again, what happens to mystery? What happens to wonder? What happens to our appreciation and enjoyment of life? Maybe that last one actually gets amplified a little bit if all we do is die. But again, I think that one of the things that death offers us an opportunity to come back into contact with is mystery, is the unknown. We're so afraid of the unknown, and that's really what drives so many people's fear of death. But the unknown doesn't mean evil or foreboding, or it just means not known. It just means mythic.
No, I got you on that. I really do. So yeah, man, that's crazy. But I also think that too, just to like hypothetically speaking, if we did knew that like reincarnation was real, I think people would try to like find their reincarnated person, like hey, my dad reincarnated to this kid over in Australia. Let me go pick him up or whatever. I think things of that nature, and also like if we knew that death just happened, like once we die, that's it.
Yeah,
I think that society would change, not for the better. I think people would be caring.
I love the reflection you're inviting through as I'm listening to you right now is, if we knew that reincarnation as an example existed, right? But to a certain, there's a whole population of people who believe that today.
Yeah.
Already, right? And I also love the notion of belief, and I believe here we go. And whenever I start using the word believe inevitably, like, they trip all over each other. There's just one after the other, they spill out. But I believe that, beliefs are this other beautiful thing that people should be allowed to explore and nurture and nourish. And if we know, right, what happens at death, then all of these other belief systems go away. And those belief systems, actually, that's part of a global culture that we have. All of these different ways of imagining what might be possible, right? Again, wonder and awe about what might happen after we die. Like, that's so beautiful. I would love to spend my life learning and coming into contact with all of the different ways of people believing what happens after we die. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, somebody got a grant to pay me to do that, I'm in. Like I'll take those planes. I'll do that for the rest of my life.
Hey man, as long as you don't find out what happens after we die, right? And
I,
if you do,
I'm
don't
gonna
tell
leave it
nobody.
open.
Don't tell
I'm not
nobody.
gonna look for answers, man. I want to look for the wonder.
I feel you, man. I do feel that in modern society we have lost a lot of the wonder that we once had. And I'm just not talking like on a mythical level, like
No.
actual magic and all that. I'm just talking about like the enjoyment that we had exploring and getting to know things. Now I feel that people, even though we are exploring like space and the ocean and whatnot, things of that nature, I feel
Yeah.
that human society doesn't really care about it anymore. It's like now instead of it being like what's the progression of society and how we're moving forward, I feel like everybody's just focused on the individual.
Yeah. Well, and what you're speaking to is because science has kind of lost its way in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
because science used to be curiosity driven, right? It used to be about wanting to understand more. Now it's about wanting to know and control, and in many cases, of course, fix,
Or
or
profit.
extract or profit, right? But science, for the sake of science, doesn't really happen as much as it used to, and that was something that was full of wonder and awe. Science at its roots, it's what drove science.
Yeah.
It was
Curiosity.
curiosity that drove science. And as we've become a society that is sort of addicted to the accumulation of knowledge, I mean, we call it a master's degree for a reason,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you're now a master because you've gathered all of this knowledge. And a true master in ancient ways of being was somebody who knew how to took a particular art and a craft and bring it into the world. That's what a master was. Have it be meaningful beyond the self. And for the most part, the accumulation of knowledge doesn't always translate into all of these different things that can go out and beyond,
No,
right?
of course not.
It's there are a lot of people who, of course, masters in science and in pharmacology and these things, and they're trying to create new medicines. And so they would definitely say that, no, I'm trying to do this in that way, but it's not quite the same energy. It's like you said, profit driven. It's
Yeah.
it's it's about what you can extract. And so,
And you could clearly see this from like, and just going from like the pharmaceutical and the medical field. We've been. I think modern medicine's been around for what the last hundred, like what we know as modern medicine, what the last 125 years, 150 years.
ballpark.
Before
I
that
would,
was pretty
that
primitive.
sounds right.
Before that was pretty primitive. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
would think that if you know things weren't as um driven by profit and people being greedy, that medicine would have excelled a lot further than what it is now, because the medical system and the insurance system are not allowing new forms of technology into the medical field because it might drive down cost, it might hit their
Hmm.
budget and hit their bottom
Hmm.
line.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it is one of the shadows of capitalism, right?
Yeah.
That the fact that capitalism made its way into the medical system. But you can say that about so many other things as well. Again, I'll bring it back to my own work and look at the uh, you know dying and funeral industry as an example. It is, I mean, is there anything that is more sterilized and more unoriginal than a funeral home visitation after someone's death? I mean, talk about something that is copy and pasted, and yet it is $1 billion industry,
Yeah.
right? But where is that person's life in these things, right? They're in the same room as somebody who was there the day before with the same decor. And of course, the people are different and the story might be different that's being told, but does that actually represent the life of the person? When I'm doing ceremonies of celebrations of life, sorry, I spend as much time as I can with the families learning about what it was that made that person, and figuring out how can we create and design a space, a moment in time where that person is reflected in every single thing that we're doing, right? Like literally invoking them, bringing them back to life. This is why I say we have to bring death back to life.
I
Like
feel you. I feel you.
we really,
Now,
really do.
when you say it like that, I get it.
Yeah. And like, it can, and at first some families are, I'm going to say, frustrated with the process of creating a celebration of life in the way that I want to do it until they've experienced it, and it allows them to really, I think the way that it's done allows them to come into contact with their grief in a much quicker way, much quicker way. And it invites them to actually acknowledge that they have work to do now. And that work is called grief. It's an honor. It's a recognition. That person has gifted them with grief, and is their responsibility to bring that into the world.
Not for you on that, because like we were just piggybacking off of what we said what was said earlier. Grief is love.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when you said when you have to discipline your child, it's not coming from a place of anger, it's coming from a place of love, even though you have to maybe raise your voice and be like, hey, don't do that.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So grief, I get it. Grief is love, bro. And a lot of people want to just hold on to the good side of love, I guess, and not come to terms with the sadness, the emptiness that they're gonna go through at first. But soon they're gonna start celebrating and living their memory and wishing that that person was still with them.
Or they won't. Both are possible, right? And it's the one thing I'm really big on is you have to give permission to people to grieve or not grieve. That also has to be true. But then you also are not responsible to hold if they choose not to.
True.
Right? So if someone rejects their grief, if somebody keeps it at bay, doesn't want to acknowledge it, you do not have to hold everything that's going to come, because I've seen that, and that's typically not an energy you want to be around too long. There's a lot of anger there. There's a lot of blame. There's a lot of condemnation when somebody doesn't want to actually allow their grief to have its way with them, right?
Do you see that a lot of people don't give themselves permission, or the grace to grieve?
I say that they are afraid. I would say that instead they are afraid to give themselves that permission. They're afraid because they're afraid they're not going to actually be able to navigate it and to hold it in their own body, right? And almost always, I can tell you, the love that they shared with the person who has died was epic. It was epic, right? But there was never, and look, I want to give these people some the gift of generosity as well, because if you have that kind of love and the death is sudden, right? And that's another issue that we have here in the West, is that deaths are sudden and unexpected. We have this entitlement sort of mindset that if I'm born, I have the right to a certain number of years, and anything less than that, I have no idea what that number is, but anything less than that is somehow also me having something stolen from me, right? Yeah. So I'm of a certain age now, and if I were to die in the next 2 years, people would say that I died too young. Yeah. Well, what does that say about the child who died at 12, right? Like, and who sets these numbers, right?
I guess it would be like social standing. Like they see that we're capable of living into, like, I would say I'll give it 100, right? Just to be, we could live up to 100 years, right? So I think most of society say, you haven't lived a full life until 80. I'm gonna just be generous on that. You know what I mean? And anything before that, they're like, damn, that person could have done so much more, or been there for these events or these memories that I had to currently have. You know what I mean?
For sure. Absolutely. And if everyone lived to be 100, where would we be? Like, what would that actually mean for us in terms of what would we do with the first 99 years and 6 months of our life? If there was some sort of an agreement that said, no, this is the thing that happens, and there's no creature on earth, by the way, that has that built into their experience, right? We're probably the only ones who can actually have that thought. And one of the things that, and actually my mentor has a story that actually speaks to this a little bit, where, it's obviously it's one of the most challenging things that someone like myself will have to work with, is working with a family who has a young person who's dying. And my mentor tells a story of this time he was working with the family of or he was called in suddenly to work with the family of an 8-year-old. And this 8-year-old had been sick almost all of her life. And this time she was not going to be leaving the hospital. And the family was really struggling with what to do with this moment. They even had it written on the medical chart, patient not to be told of prognosis. And when my mentor asked them about that, they said, well, we don't want her to be sad. We she should have a full life. She shouldn't know that she's dying. She's too young to die, right?
Yeah.
And my mentor said, well, he asked them, first of all, if they knew that to be true, if anybody had actually gotten into anything that looked like a conversation with the girl about what was happening to her, and nobody had done so. So they ended up giving him permission to go and speak with the girl. And when he went into the room, she was sitting at the edge of the bed and kind of looking out the window. And he introduced himself and said a little bit about what it was that he did. And before he really got the chance, the girl actually said to him, they don't want me to know, do they? And he was like, no, what? Well, they don't want me to know that I'm dying. Right? And Stephen said, and he said, that's right. They don't. And she said, why is that? And they said, well, I don't really know, but there's something about you being so young and not necessarily having lived, a full life. And she was like, well, I don't understand. Like, what does that mean? And so he gave his sort of version of what it means to have a full life, have the experiences you want to have, the experience, have, this sense of fullness and joy and happiness, right? Those are the markers of a full life. And she said, oh, okay. And he said, well, do you think you've had a full life? And she said, well, I don't know. He said, well, have you had like fun experiences? Have you had talk to me about some of the things that you've loved about your life? And the first thing she said, almost without hesitation, was, well, I got to ride a pony, and I was, oh, that's really good. That's really good. And so then he asked, what else? And she gave a couple of examples, 3 or 4 examples, and then came to about the 4th or 5th example. And she was like, I got to ride that pony. And so here you have an 8-year-old who, first of all, is very keenly aware that she is in fact dying, even though nobody wants her to know that, and that she defines her full life based on 5 experiences, and that she's full with that she's actually coming back to the first one, that there's nothing else needed. And so when you say full life, again, the question becomes defined by whom and set out by whom, and what are the metrics that we would use? And that's from a more sort of human point of view. But then there's also just the simple math of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Which again, if we all live to be 100, is it sustainable? Is it sustainable, right? Are our workplaces sustainable? Are we able to actually support from a food perspective? I mean, we are, we know we are, but we don't have that desire or the willingness to. And again, what do we do with the first 99 and a half years of our life if really it's the last 6 months where we know that we're about to die? And that's a guaranteed, and we all are on the same clock, right? So again, it's that invitation for mystery. And again, I'm going to speak a little bit to my belief system. Okay. So I believe, call it universe, call it whatever you want. Some people will call it God, but I believe part of the meaning of life, at least, is that we are these unique and individualized expressions of the universe experiencing itself. And if you believe in anything that sounds or looks or feels like that, religiously tied or otherwise, then there is an opportunity there to understand that the 8-year-old who dies at that time is what the universe sought to experience through that body.
I got that. That's a
And you get
powerful story.
and
That's
you
an
get to pick,
extremely powerful story, yeah, man.
right?
Yeah.
So, my life is a privilege. My life is a privilege. I'm privileged to be leading this life. It becomes no less a privilege if my life ends at 57, right?
Yeah.
It becomes no less of a privilege if it's at 73, which is when my mom died. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, and I said this in another conversation today. I enjoy talking about a lot of things. You can clearly tell I enjoy talking, period.
Yeah.
Other than my children, one of my very favorite things to talk about is my mother's dying process. The moment that we knew she was dying until the moment that she died, and everything that she continues to nourish in me. So much of what I do is nourished by my mother's death. So much. How can I not be? And I know my mom is super, I mean, proud might not be the right word, but like she's looking at this and she's like seeing what's going on and she's going, yeah.
That's
Keep
my boy.
going. Keep
That's
going.
my boy. Keep going, baby.
Don't let go. Don't let go. It's uncomfortable. I know it hurts. I know it's fucking hard. Don't let go. This is necessary. So, if my mom hadn't died at 73, which by and I'm not picking on your number, but I'm just saying.
No. Like I said, it was a hypothetical.
Yeah, it's a hypothetical, right? But let's say that was true.
Yeah.
Then I would not be doing what I'm doing for another 23 years in the way that I'm doing it.
True.
I'm doing it now in this moment, in this way. A lot of it is because my mother died at 73 with so much beauty and grace. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. She's the one who put you on this path.
She's the one that I'll take it just a little nuance that I will say that she is the one that planted my feet in a committed way to this path. I was already on it, but when my mom died, it was like, oh, gotcha.
Absolutely, man.
That's when it became vocation. It stopped being a job and it became vocation. And to me, vocation and like the word genius is also one that gets misunderstood a lot. Yeah. Genius isn't about intelligence. Genius is the thing that's woven into your genes, hence the word, that you are brought into spirit to bring into the world. And I would say that I'm living my vocation. I'm expressing my genius. And I'm still learning. I'm not a genius. That's different, right?
No,
I'm expressing
the human experience is about learning something every day.
That's right.
Keep on gathering information and progressing.
That's right. And when you get called to the mic as you do and respond to it in the way that you do, that's your genius.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, Paul, besides letting us know what a genius is, what are your final thoughts and message for the roomies?
Oh man, it's a great invitation. My final message if I was going to give one to the people who are listening to us, be grateful for it all. Be grateful for it all. Be grateful for your grief. Be grateful for the love. Be grateful for, just be grateful for it all, and be grateful for the diversity. Remember who you are. Remember who you are, what you are a part of. We don't live in nature, we are nature. And part of the work I think we're being invited into is to, as I spoke about earlier, to reinsert ourselves back into nature in a meaningful way.
I feel you, bro. Roomies, with all that being said, remember, keep loving, keep hope, and don't forget anybody, because they're all still living within you. Peace out.